Hello and welcome back to the second instalment of my video diaries for Context of Photography. So I've been experimenting with some techniques that I want to use in my final video piece. I started off by trying to do some time-lapse with the camera that I'm currently recording on, a Canon PowerShot, which I did a little bit of research into how to do time-lapse. Was the easiest camera to use compared to my DSLR camera, which would have been a bit of a nightmare to deal with. So yeah, I used this and I just did a time-lapse out my bedroom window of the sky. I wanted to try and capture like the sunset, so I did it over like a 40-minute period, I think, whilst the sun was setting, so like the sky got darker and it was quite pretty. So I ended up with around 12,000 still frames that I then put into Premiere Pro and made them all 0.01 of a second long to try and get that kind of time-lapse aesthetic. I then exported it and then sped that video up a little bit more, but the effect wasn't like a typical time-lapse. It was quite stuttery and kind of all over the place. Although it was an accident, I really do like it, and I have done some more experiments since and kind of recreated that as best I can, which turned out pretty good as well. But I think the aesthetic as a whole could really contribute to the overall tone of the piece. It's obviously quite creepy and a bit unsettling, so I think I could really work that into the whole narrative of the piece and you know, make it quite creepy, and you know, as the piece progresses it can be, you know, kind of more disturbing and eerie, so I think that would work very well for the piece. But as I say, I took some more footage. I went to my local park and I did manage to get those to be, you know, actual time lapses rather than stuttery, but I did edit them so they were stuttery as well, so I've got two different versions of each clip. Some of them turned out really cool. My favourite one is I took some footage of the sun kind of like peeking through the trees, and it created like a really cool lens flare effect, and it's kind of like all red and it's quite intense, and it's a really nice shot, and I think could work with the piece as well. I'll explain more about colours later because I kind of delved into some colour theory as well, so I think the red lens flares could work really well. Some of the other shots were pretty cool as well. I took some various ones of the sky and the clouds going by, which could be quite nice. I took one of kind of some like white fluffier clouds that, you know, were quite pretty and aesthetic. And then some kind of like darker grey clouds, so you know, kind of maybe could incorporate that into the piece and kind of maybe symbolise some kind of change and disturbance maybe. There was one I took of the river. There was like these brick things in the water that kind of like made the water look quite separate, which could be quite nice. And there was like a little bit of a lens flare of the reflection as well, which was quite pretty. So I think that could work quite nicely. It was a very interesting shot. I took some more experimental shots as well. I did one where I was holding the camera and walking along and doing a time lapse like that, and that looked quite jittery and a bit strange, but maybe I could use it. I'm not really too sure about it, but like I say, it was just an experiment and another idea to think about. We then went to a nature reserve in Cannock and I took some more footage there. I just recorded them, I didn't do time lapses that time. But it started raining, which I thought was actually kind of perfect because again it could kind of, you know, show the change within the narrative, and I think again that could work quite nicely to show like some kind of contrast in the shots. One of my favourite shots from that, I stood in like this little clearing and I pointed the camera just up at the sky whilst it was raining, and some drops fell on the lens, and It's quite a simple shot, but I thought that could work quite nicely again with like the contrast in the narrative. But again, I took quite a few similar shots to what I took before of like the sky and the clouds and stuff like that. There was one though of the rain kind of falling into the lake, and it was really glittery and pretty, and that was really nice, so I think I could do some fun stuff with that shot. I also did a little experiment with some smoke. I'm not really sure if I was going to use it, but it was just kind of an experiment to see if I liked it and maybe could incorporate it somehow. Basically what I did, it was kind of a bit of a ghetto setup. I kind of enjoy doing ghetto setups actually. But basically what I did is I got a black t-shirt and draped it over my radiator, which is just behind the camera. Yeah, so I had like a black backdrop for it. Got an incense stick, burnt it, so it made some smoke obviously, and used different lights to make the smoke look different colours, and just like shone it over the smoke so it kind of like illuminated the smoke. I did one with just like plain white light, one with blue light, and one with red light. And they all look pretty cool. I think if I was going to like use a similar shot, I might want to shoot it again, perhaps on my DSLR camera, because they are slightly out of focus. But again, it was just like kind of a experiment that I thought I might try out. Not sure if I will actually use it. It could be interesting to use with the colour theory that I'm going to talk about in a minute as well actually, because obviously I have used different colours with those, so maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'll try editing it together and see what I think. I did actually try out a few editing techniques to think about how I could like transition between the shots. I did one technique which I had actually used before in a previous project, where I kind of like glitched the shot out and made it like look all stuttery and kind of like separate the colours. That looked quite cool. There was a couple of different transitions that were just like on Premiere Pro that looked quite good. There was like a light wipe type thing, I don't know what to call it, but that was quite nice. I think maybe could work well with like the lens flary shots. That might be cool. There was one that I don't really know how to explain it. It was very strange. It was like kind of like a little squiggly, I don't know, it kind of looked like the shots kind of melted together. That was pretty cool. But my favourite one was the last one that I tried out, which was again kind of like a glitchy type effect. But I kind of warped out the first shot with like some weird effects that were on Premiere Pro. And kind of made it look all stuttery, and like cut those in just like very quickly, and then kind of cut to the next shot. So that one was my favourite. Yeah, kind of like a glitchy type thing, but I think could work quite well again to kind of bring in that kind of creepy element to the video. So I have pretty much decided how I'm going to structure this video now, and I think what I've decided is that it would be easier to follow the theme of narrative rather than the internet. Just because I think it will give me more creative freedom and be able to do what I want with the video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to structure the video in order of like the steps of the indoctrination process, and kind of create shots that kind of symbolize each one. So I'll run through them quickly again so you kind of understand what I'm talking about. So step one of being indoctrinated into a cult is being at a crossroads within your life. You're going through a difficult transition, or you're in a vulnerable state. So for something like that, I was thinking maybe like some soft reassuring sound to accompany maybe like some bright clearer imagery. Maybe I could use perhaps the shots of like the river, where it's kind of like got those brick thingies that kind of separate it, just to kind of show like that crossroads, or you know, decision making aspect of it. Step two is the soft sell. So you're meeting new people and you're curious about this organization. You're seeing the light for the first time basically. So again, something quite reassuring, quite bright and inviting in terms of the imagery I want to use. So step three is a new reality, and I'm not really entirely sure what kind of imagery I want to make for that yet, but I'm thinking overall just some kind of like shift in maybe like the colours, or maybe like kind of start glitching it out at that point, to kind of represent some kind of change and some kind of like mental transition. Step four is about the relationship with the leader. So I think at that point introduce like the lens flares as kind of a concept to show like this idea of hope and, you know, some kind of powerful figure. I was thinking maybe do like some silhouetted shots of a person kind of like holding their arms out Jesus style, to kind of like represent this very strong, powerful character. Step 5 is about the enemy, or like the outside world. So I'm thinking maybe do some shots in the city to kind of contrast the more natural shots that I've already taken. Yeah, just kind of to show some kind of opposition or, you know, otherworldly activity going on. Step 6 is about peer pressure, so I'm thinking maybe I could do like a silhouetted shot of multiple people just to kind of show like some sense of community and other people within the cult. Step 7 is about the sociopathic narcissist that is the leader. So I'm thinking maybe doing something quite funky with the silhouetted shot, arms out, Jesus style. Maybe do like some kind of like light filter on that, because I was planning to go in the studio and use the lighting for that. So maybe use like some kind of like lighting effects for that, to show just like the personality of the leader essentially. So that's how I wanted to structure my video, to create this like narrative of how somebody would become indoctrinated into a cult. I did some research into colour theory, which was actually very interesting and I got very deep with it, but stemmed from a group tutorial that we had the other week. And Paul was saying about how kind of like colours and images are used in like marketing to like grab somebody's attention and make them want to buy, make them want to consume whatever the product is, so which I thought was quite interesting. And, you know, I was thinking about how these colours actually affect us, why people use these colours, you know, and what actually do they do to the brain. So I did a little bit of research into that. So I found an article that detailed kind of like the research and studies that had been done over time about this very thing, about how colour affects people. Started off with a European doctor called Ponza in 1875, and he had a patient who refused to eat, so he put him in a red room and eventually he started wanting food, he wanted to start eating again. He had another aggressive patient who he put in a blue room. In just an hour they had calmed right down, so obviously the effects can be quite drastic really. There was another study conducted by Goldstein in 1942 who found out that red made pathological problems of Parkinson's patients worse, but green made them better. Brain damaged patients also reacted negatively to red, so obviously it's a very mental thing that's going on with these colours and the way we perceive them. In 1957 it was found that red had a bigger effect than blue, so red is more stimulating on the mind. So in 1974 K.W. Jacobs and F.E. Hustmeyer discovered that red is more stimulating than green, and green is more stimulating than blue and yellow. So they concluded that colours with a longer wavelength are more stimulating than ones with shorter wavelengths. So it was then discovered that too much stimulation can affect you negatively. It can change your breathing patterns, pulse, blood pressure and muscle tension. So I figure that's why we associate red with anger, because obviously those things are typical of somebody who's very angry. And not enough stimulation can cause anxiousness, sleeplessness, excessive emotional reaction, loss of concentration and nervousness. So white isn't actually like a neutral colour, so, you know, white doesn't stimulate you at all basically. It does lead to a lack of stimulation. So I kind of thought all this was very interesting, and it's obviously really cool to know how colours affect us and how we perceive them, and I think it would be great to kind of utilise that within the project. And I know this is probably going to sound a bit weird and hocus pocus, but I then started thinking about the chakras, which are kind of associated with Hinduism and some forms of Buddhism. I thought about this because the chakras all have like their own specific colour and they all kind of represent something different, so I thought I could kind of use the meanings of the chakras and attach it to my project. So I will go through the 7 chakras and kind of what they are associated with and kind of tell you how I'm linking that to my project. The first one is the root chakra, which is found at the coccyx of your body. This is supposed to be like the foundation and represents crucial feelings and being grounded in your life. It's associated with feelings like courage, power, strength, love, desire, and also associated with war, which of course are very, very powerful emotions. And the root chakra attracts more attention due to its intensity. So I thought this was quite interesting because red is associated with the root chakra, and obviously the symbolic meaning of it is very powerful, and the emotions attached to it are quite intense. And kind of red as a colour is proven to, you know, be very stimulating and kind of evoke these very powerful emotions in people. So I thought that was quite interesting. So the next one is the sacral chakra, which is found at the pubic bone, and is kind of attached to the colour orange. Is associated with sexuality, creativity, desire, reproduction, compassion, happiness, and attraction. So again, these are quite intense emotions to have, and obviously orange is kind of similar to red, and I would just assume would have quite a similar wavelength. So, you know, it makes sense that these kind of intense feelings are attached to the colour orange. So the next chakra is the solar plexus chakra, which is found at the navel and is associated with the colour yellow. So this one is kind of supposed to be the base of your like professional success, and if this, you know, chakra is balanced, then you will have a lot of success within your life, like financially and stuff like that. It's associated with the sun and having lots of energy. Emotions attached to it are cheerfulness, energeticness, and overall is supposed to represent like mental stimulation. Next is the heart chakra, which is green and is obviously at the heart. This one impacts relationships, and things like distrust, envy, unfaithfulness weaken the heart chakra. It's also associated with nature and is believed to bring wholeness in our lives, so I guess kind of represents the idea that relationships are key to, you know, living a happy life. So next is the throat chakra, which is blue and obviously is at the throat. Is associated with the ability to listen and communicate, and apparently we are more able to communicate effectively when the throat chakra is balanced. The article I was reading about this also said about you know, if the throat chakra is balanced, you use a pleasant voice in discussion, which I thought was quite interesting because obviously blue is kind of associated with being calm and relaxed, and, you know, if your throat chakra is balanced, then you are more calm and relaxed in the way you discuss and communicate with people. So next is the third eye chakra, which is found at the forehead, right there, right between your eyes, and is indigo. It's associated with imagination, and you're more able to connect and share essential ideas when this is balanced. It improves telepathic abilities, reduces fear of death, and is the main centre of intuition and enables us to focus. The third eye chakra is also kind of related to enlightenment, and if it's balanced, then you're kind of more enlightened in life. And the last one is the crown chakra, which is at the very top of your head, and is violet. This one is connected to enlightenment and spiritual connection to others and supreme beings. Balance of the crown chakra can lead to performing miracles, knowing right and wrong, interpretation of hidden things, etc. So it's all kind of linked to spirituality and enlightenment and kind of, you know, achieving full enlightenment, I suppose. But overall, I thought this was really quite interesting and does obviously relate to the scientific research about colour in terms of like the emotions that are attached to it and the way the colours affect us. The red, orange, yellow and green chakras kind of had more of a focus on connection with others and kind of more about stimulation, which generally those colours have in real life. The blue, indigo and violet chakras were kind of more about a connection with yourself, kind of more about calmness and clarity, which again is kind of related to actual scientific studies. I also thought it was quite good to look at some kind of, you know, more religious imagery as well, since I'm working on a project about cultism. So I thought it was quite interesting to be able to relate something like this to something that is about religion. So then, based on the chakras and kind of what they represent, I then attached a colour to each step of the indoctrination process. So for step one, the crossroads in life, I chose indigo and kind of the third eye chakra because this relates to enlightenment and a more vivid reality, and that is what the path to cultism promises. So for step two, the soft cell, I chose blue because that's about listening and communicating the essential ideas with others. Step three, a new reality, I chose violet because that's about enlightenment and finding, you know, true clarity within your life. So for step four, the relationship with the leader, I chose green because the heart chakra is all to do with relationships. It's also associated with nature and bringing wholeness to our lives, and the leader is a supposed messenger from God, so obviously again is trying to connect their followers with nature and bring wholeness to their lives. Step five is about the enemy, and I obviously chose red for that one. because red is associated with war, and it could be maybe like considered war against those outside of the cult. It also shows the power and strength of the cult itself. Step 6 is about peer pressure, so I chose yellow because it's kind of about success and finding success within your life. So I thought maybe that could kind of relate to, you know, considering yourself at a successful point in your life within the cult. And step 7 is the narcissistic leader, which I chose orange for because orange is about desire, attraction and compassion, and I thought maybe that could represent, you know, desire, attraction and compassion for the narcissistic leader, even though they're doing very questionable, self-serving things. So I plan to maybe give these shots perhaps like a coloured tint to kind of represent this research that I've done. I'm not sure how it'll turn out, but I will try it out and show that to you in the next update. But generally I just thought it was quite interesting to consider colour and like perhaps how I could use it as a symbol within the piece. And obviously the chakras were quite interesting as well, and obviously, you know, link back to the idea of cultism and religion and those kind of things as well. But that's all from me today, so thanks very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.